Hello, and welcome to another news-filled episode of Cloud9. We got all the results for you. CSGO, Rocket League, League of Legends. That's about it. I'm your host, Havokpus, and I'm joined by frozencreek and Dr. Manhatten. How are you fellows doing?
Um, I am in my second day off work this week, and I don't have to work tomorrow because of the polar vortex. It is cold
Sick.
as balls. It is fucking freezing outside. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
kind of
heard
chill.
about that, man. But yeah, that does suck. And I remember Hungrybox even made a joke saying, "I'd say pour one out for the Midwest, but chances are it'd freeze by the time it hits the ground."
That's actually true. it it was like I went outside, but I didn't look at the wind chill. But I know in Chicago, which is a couple hours away, it was like -40. So I think it got into like the negative 30s here. It's wild.
Yeah, the weather. Good thing I'm a bit south, so I don't have to really deal with that. But yeah, let's get started. We have some pretty good, I guess, goodish results. Starting with CS:GO, the team played at the E-League Invitational. This is with Zelsis, the latest of a long string of stand-ins for Cloud9, because as we all know, Golden is still out on medical leave because I believe it's a heart condition. He has some sort of heart condition, and his doctors advise against traveling and whatnot to over aggravate it. But the team actually did surprisingly well. They got all the way to the finals, and it was against FaZe Clan, and they had stomped them earlier in the tournament. And they crushed them the first round, but then they just kind of fell apart rounds 2 and 3. So they lost 1-2, but seeing the CSGO team get second in a fairly decent tournament with some pretty stiff competition is still pretty good. And they showed some pretty good results.
Yeah, no question about that. I was actually like, that's one of the reason this one's pretty big in general is because one, you did mention the competition, which was pretty stiff. I mean, literally, the one thing Cloud9 did not have in common with the rest of these guys at this invitational, or at least in the bracket, was we're the only ones who aren't legends for the upcoming major. Like Complexities still has their status. Big, who you guys know, I think went to the finals on, I think it was Stockholm against Navi, and I think I want to say they took a set off or a game off of Navi, but they were pretty competitive. And FaZe, who you guys know, who are trying out a Dren right now, who actually looks like he's fitting in quite well with that lineup, and FaZe is looking like a good contender. But no, this was big. This was really big for Cloud9 CS:GO. It's the first finish at a decent LAN I can remember since the major happened. And with the fact that we have Zealous still in this, and we're starting to put up a result. Even again, we even in the semis, I think in the upper bracket took a set against FaZe Clan. So I mean, it's not we're not at a complete loss right now, which I think is good. And now that we're basically eyeing major season, the question is how do we get these guys at least prepared enough so that they look, or at least put up a respectable result? Because this is the first time again since this is the first time I believe since the lineup broke up for the major that we've been top 10 now on HLTV. So the question is how do we keep this iron burning for Katowice?
Yeah, and I can't speak aloud for Zelsis's personal performance. I didn't see anything too hot from him, but the other four, the starting four, they looked really good. Kiowin, Flusha, and Automatic, and Rush. I almost forgot Rush's name. They all looked really good, and they all looked like they performed really well. So at least as a team, and at least out of the four consistent players, it looks like they've really built up some good synergy. So it's mostly either if Zelsis does become sort of the starter, he builds up that synergy, or we just do well enough to where we can get just somebody to be a constant starter and actually have a 5-man squad for more than like a tournament or two.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Keo and to Rush. They stepped it up big time in that entire tournament.
Yeah, they did really well. I'm really hoping that when the major comes around, they can keep this level of play and maybe get a little bit better, so we can at least provide some good competition. I I don't want us to look like fools in the group stage, you guys. I don't want to get tossed out of groups.
Yeah, likewise.
But moving on to Rocket League, the team was at the WSOE tournament. It was a big Rocket League tournament, and the team got top four. And there was a very controversial ruling. I believe it was against Flipside in the semis. I think so, but there was a very controversial ruling because I believe something happened during like the first match in the set, and it if there wasn't a ruling, Cloud9 would have won and would have advanced, but they had to like do the game over, and because of that, C9 ended up overall losing that series. And it was sort of a controversial thing. I can't remember the specifics of it. It was a really weird deal.
Yeah, I missed that. I'd be interested in hearing more about it though.
Yeah, I missed it when it happened. I tried to look at some things explaining what exactly happened, but it was really confusing. It was really weird. But kind of unfortunate. But I mean, top four is, I think, what Rocket League usually gets. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I believe the last. No, we were. No. The last, yeah, the last Rocket League event that we had was the World Championship, and we won that. So I'm good with top four here.
Yeah, and also also wanted to shout out that, not to mention, I'm glad that the C9 TSM rivalry is actually extended to this now. Just for those guys who didn't know, because a few weeks ago, that roster known as Weedham Girls actually was now officially acquired by TSM, and this is
Oh,
actually,
TSM is Weedham Girls?
yes, Weedham Girls is actually TSM now. So
Oh, so that's why they look so good.
yeah, so legitimately, the fact, like, I'm just stoked again to see that, like, the rivalry extend now, because it's extended through many esports. Back when Astralis was TSM, we have, Leffen versus Mango constantly. Back when Ally was on C9, you had him versus Zero, which always was fun. But again, it's just always cool to see them extended to this, and that's part. And seeing, and again, I was cool to see them beat them in another one, which again, I think across esports is probably one of, if not our biggest rival right now. So again, just like a quick aside, like, shout out that our rivalry got extended to one more esport.
I'm just really glad that Weedham Girls got picked up, because at Worlds they looked great, and it was kind of shocking that they weren't like signed to a team yet, and they were independent. So it's really great that they got picked up by somebody, and TSM usually takes care of their people really well. So I think they'll be good for a while, and it's great to see that they can still compete and actually get, I guess, a more stable living.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Frozen, if you don't have any comments on our other esports,
No, I tried to find it.
okay.
No luck.
Well, at least you tried. That's the important thing.
I didn't try that hard, so let's just move on.
All right. Well, League of Legends, some stuff happened. Briefly, I just want to mention that Academy did beat CLG and Golden Guardians Academy. Basically, it was just Kumo and everyone else backing him up. I mean, Academy roster as a whole looked really strong, but I think it's the big emphasis lately, especially, has just been Kumo is an absolute fucking monster, and everyone else is just trying to keep up with him and look like just as good. Like after like he does something big.
Yeah. We all knew that Kumo already had potential, and actually I was even surprised that he didn't get promoted to like another team, or if like Cloud9. I mean, part of me thinks that probably just Cloud9 didn't want to let him go. but I thought he and Viper were like without doubt the most outstanding guys in the academy, and the fact that this guy is like I think now more than ever, I feel like this dude's like legitimately hungry and proving that he can actually get promoted to like an actual LCS roster. Because I would say probably next to maybe Blabber, and some people can point to Golden Glue, but I mean, it's iffy. But I would say next to Blabber, I would say on our academy roster without doubt, Kumo is without doubt the most talented and one with a ton of potential for growth.
Yeah, I think it could be that he hasn't moved to a new team yet because maybe Cloud9 really wants to stick with this 10-man sort of roster and really have like a more fluid sort of roster for League of Legends. And they probably sat Kumo aside and was like, hey, you can stay if you want. And they could have maybe even offered him a bit more pay. I'm not really sure. I'm completely speculating. This is not fact, but I could definitely see them sort of taking him aside and being like, look, we'll pay you a bit more money if you sign a contract, or like renew your contract or stick with us or whatever. And maybe he really likes it in Cloud9, and maybe he thinks that being on Cloud9 even in this capacity is probably better than competing and maybe getting a starting spot. So a guaranteed job is better than a possibly not a job. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh yeah, and if he waits long enough, we just know that Licorice will just go to another team. Kappa.
Well, yeah, but they got some interesting stuff this week though, because again, they got what I think they got TSMA, which will be pretty interesting, and then they also got Clutch, who I'm not too familiar with on their academy side.
Yeah, I haven't paid attention to the academy teams too much. Academy's never been our big focus anyway. But let's transition over to the big team, because that's probably where the majority of our discussion is going to be anyway. So Cloud9 played Team Liquid and 100 Thieves last weekend. They lost to Team Liquid, but beat 100 Thieves. Now, I'm going to say something that there was a bit of contention in just our little group chat when this happened, but I think if Cloud9 had a better draft, they could have beaten Team Liquid. I think it was all on the draft. They draft this weird poke comp and Nunu into basically letting Team Liquid draft really big tanks that can just absorb all the poke, and everyone just hides behind, and it's really hard to make a poke comp effective. So I think C9 kind of drafted themselves into a corner and sort of gave themselves a loss before the game started. That's my opinion. I don't know how you two feel about it.
What I will say, Havoc, in that regard is we could in terms of whether we could have beaten them or not.
I think we could have. With how we played the early game versus Team Liquid, as well as how we played against 100 Thieves, if we had a much different draft and drafted more towards making the Ezreal pick and maybe the Zoe pick, or just giving Nisqy a different pick, or something, just changing a couple of picks here and there, or taking away something from Team Liquid, we could have definitely won. I think that I am firm in this belief.
Yeah, I will at the very least meet you in the middle, because I mean I'm not one for controversial or like hot takes or whatever, but I will at the very least say that it could have been more competitive. Like I will definitely even say that much in the middle. I think that we did draft ourselves into a hole in the sense, for example, one of the biggest kind of red flags for the Team Liquid draft is I've never known Nick Smithy to be too much of a Lee Sin player. I mean that's just me. He definitely has more of a defensive style that he likes to go for, and the fact that pretty much Lee Sin is the exact opposite of that. And Nisqy definitely played with a bit of nerves with the Zoe pick. On top of, I think they didn't respect the Cassiopeia pick enough, and we even saw interviews with Jensen saying that. So I do agree with the part where I say we drafted ourselves into a hole. I think the Nunu pick, while it was more of a comfort pick, I think it's relatively controversial and a pretty heavily debated one. And pretty much the only person doing anything at that point was Licorice, which, I mean, I think that the stage kind of got to them a bit. It's the first time competing since Worlds, which is probably the shortest time amongst any LCS roster, to be fair. But I think Nisqy again, it's just they're really about like trying to cultivate and play more around Nisqy in that regard. And Team Liquid was doing their best to just make sure that even though they didn't have the best synergy, considering they had Jensen and Core JJ to add to the roster, I think that they were just again doing what Team Liquid does best, and all super teams do best, and just trying to brute force their way through everything. I actually don't think Team Liquid was playing very smart at all. So I could probably see where you're coming from with the we could have beat them, because they were not. They were playing relatively somewhat disrespectfully, but Cloud9 was too.
Um, I I don't think the draft was really that much of a problem for us. I think it was more of our execution of the draft. The only thing I would have changed in the draft was instead of taking Alistar, I would have taken Braum as our first pick after the second ban ending phase, just so they couldn't get Braum. I think Reaper was talking about it afterwards, and I think he said that they expected Core JJ to go on to Thresh just based off him being kind of like a flare player, more or less. So that I don't know why in the world he wouldn't play Braum into that comp, but I think that is probably the only thing I would change about that, because that would have given us some more disengage, and it wouldn't have allowed Team Liquid to pick the stand behind me with Braum. So that's the only thing I would change about the draft. I think a lot of it had to do with our execution more than anything else. We drafted ourselves into a mid-game team comp with Zoe and Ezreal, and we didn't do a very good job playing around it. The first big fight that we picked around the mid lane, I don't know what time it was off the top of my head, but Jensen already had a full Lude and Psycho, and Nisqy had, I think, just like boots, and then maybe blasting wand, and they picked this fight into Cassiopeia with a full item, who was obviously just going to dismantle them at that point, and that kind of put the whole game against us, because we fell behind too early picking a fight that we probably shouldn't have picked. A lot of the execution throughout the game was a little questionable. I don't know if it was specifically Sven going out and just like throwing himself in bad positions, or if it was communication throughout the team, but Sven's and Nunu kind of got picked on quite a bit in the mid and late game team fights, which I think is more of what killed us than anything else, was the fact that they were able to just kill them immediately before we could spend any time trying to poke them out and siege it all, which I think was one of the bigger problems, as opposed to anything that happened in the draft, because our draft wasn't so bad that we didn't have a win condition. I think it was more of just our execution, and I think that if we were to play that over again, that the team would be able to learn a lot from how they executed the first game. What I was impressed with overall was, I know Nisqy missed a couple cues here and there. Nerves happen. Sometimes you miss. It happens. Even Tom Brady throws bad passes out every once in a while. So the first big miscue is no big deal. He has some huge big flash cues onto Jensen throughout the game that were a really big deal. And another thing I liked was after the first Team Liquid Baron, we were only down like 4 or 5k after I think that was after the whole Baron buff timing, which is like insane considering that we drafted more into a poke comp with a little wave clear as opposed to like a wave clear comp. So I was impressed with how we gathered gold around the map and some of the plays that we made, but I think it was more of an execution thing.
Yeah, I think, and C9 had even said that in, they had one of those docu episode thingies, behind the scenes, jams. They even said that they think that in hindsight, the Nunu pick was probably not the correct choice, and Sven did kind of egg the team on into picking the Nunu, and he sort of convinced them. But yeah, I think overall, looking at I guess transitioning to the 100 Thieves match a bit with saying that I'm really impressed so far by Nisqy's performance. He's only had 2 games, but he looks really strong in lane as well as in team fights. He does seem at least at the same level as Jensen mechanically. I think his biggest issue right now is synergizing with the team and syncing up with how they play and really learning the Cloud9 way of doing things, because no matter how talented a player is, if a team does something completely different than their previous teams, they have to learn that, and that can still cause problems. But I think Nisqy is going to be fine. His Aatrox absolutely decimated 100 Thieves, and I think Huhi did help out a bit with some really dopey plays. There was some really unfortunate mistakes that Huhi and the rest of 100 Thieves did make that probably did help C9 a lot. But I think that Nisqy just played really well, and the team had a much better draft. They had Ezreal and they had Braum, as well as, I think a more synergistic comp throughout and more centered on what they wanted to do, and not pulling off some complicated thing or pulling off a poke comp type deal, which teams can have a lot of trouble doing. So I think that overall, 100 Thieves match was a lot better, and I think that C9 is definitely going to have a better spring season than some previous seasons that they've had.
The 100 Thieves season, the game was really good. Simply because I felt like that was the kind of the game that I wasn't expecting for it to go that way. But at the same time, I feel like that was the game that Nisqy kind of needed, because one of the key things with new players, or at least younger players, or at least even new teams to this degree, is usually you want to start off on the right foot as soon as possible. And a lot of people were buying into the hype of 100 Thieves, myself included. So the fact that he could just legitimately just run down the entire lane, doing whatever the hell he wanted, and was definitely the star of the show that entire game against 100 Thieves, was a really, really big testament to Nisqy. And again, it's just, for me, it's more of a confidence booster than anything, because it's those little things like that will at least kind of, at the very least, kind of dull the nerves a bit more, just because if we went 0-2 that week after that Team Liquid game, I felt like most people would either, one, be in panic mode, or B, like the 100 Thieves are right now, or B, it might just kill any sort of or it might kill confidence that for a few more weeks to come up. So yeah, just really, I think that was the one game that we definitely needed that weekend, just to show that there is still some hope. And if you ask anybody who's watched the first week of LCS, even though we're still not the best team, most people would have Cloud9 a very, very, very stapled second right now.
I think there's a clear definition between the top teams and the bottom teams, at least right now. There are teams that have looked really bad, and there are teams that have looked really good. And I think the standings will continue to shake out as the weeks go on. Looking at CLG, for example, I don't even know what's happened to that team. Just through historically how the mighty have fallen, and they're almost insanely dangerous ups and downs. It's kind of shocking, 100 Thieves as well. You bring over Bang, who is a world champion, only to completely implode in other roles and other ways.
Yeah, and on the CLG point, one of the big things about CLG that I will say is there was really nothing I could sink my teeth into, and I think that even that's what Mark Z said on Hotline League last night, where it's just most of these teams, there was one or two things okay, that works okay, or hey, these guys might work that way, But I mean, with Optic, it was oh, okay, Crown and Dardock might work okay, that's not so bad. Or FlyQuest is okay, Turtle and Santorum.
Yeah. With CLG, there's really absolutely nothing impressive about that roster.
Yeah, there's really nothing to sink your teeth into.
And I'm sorry if that sounds cruel to CLG fans. That's just how it seems to look when you look at all of the other sort of rosters, and how even C9, it's Licorice is one of the best, if not the best, top laner in the region. and you have Sneaky, he's been like the soul of Cloud9 for forever and is still able to keep his form. And you have Nisqy, who's been talked about, and you have Svenskeren, who's made a resurgence in his form, and Zazel has been praised a lot. So in C9, you have these factors that everyone's like, oh yeah, these guys are really good. They have at least one or two people. With CLG, it's definitely a thing of
Yeah, it's very.
I just can't get excited for Stixay or Wiggly.
Yeah, it's pity, real pity.
Well, speaking of CLG, as well as the Golden Guardians, we play them next weekend, or this weekend rather. And I gotta say, guys, this should be a slam dunk weekend. I don't think we should have any problems. The Golden Guardians and CLG both look weak as anything, and I don't know how you lose to these two teams that seem to really just have a lot of uncertainties on how they should be playing the game and how they should be winning and stuff. Frozen? Thoughts?
Yeah. But both teams looked questionable in the first week. They both started out 0-2, so I'm not. I don't want to say like I'm not worried about it, but I feel like the Cloud9 team is kind of more prepared in the sense that they've been practicing for longer than pretty much any of the other teams have at this point. I do know that both of the rosters do have some decent players on them. It's just more of the fact that I think as a cohesive unit, Cloud9 is going to be kind of an overwhelming force over nearly anyone in the league this year. So I think one of the bigger questions is I wonder if there's a chance that a Reaper brings in somebody from the Academy team to give him a game.
I could definitely see that. I could see him definitely bringing in Blabber to take on CLG, or bring in Golden Glue to take on Golden Guardians, because he's going up against Froggen, and I'm sorry, but after watching the Golden Guardians matches over the weekend, it just felt like, well, everything I thought about Froggen was kind of true. And it's kind of weird. The Froggen pick up, I'm sorry, it still just boggles my mind that the Golden Guardians are like, we need a mid laner. Let's get Froggen. He hasn't played in a year, and his other performances on teams have been not good. But hey, the fifth time's the charm.
Yeah, this guy, I actually forgot. This guy has not cracked 7th since 2015. Since 2015, like every team he's been on, like already every roster he was on, whether it was the year he did on Elements or the 2 years he did on Echo Fox, they were
like right after he won the championship with Alliance.
Yeah, he's just been a
very
hard 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with Golden Guardians right now, it's just like, well, I'm not selling most of my stock in them yet in terms of how much I'm hyped for them. It's just, it seemed like they were doing the way Reginald describes what he hates in one of his reflections. There's a quote from Reginald where he said, 4 people doing one thing wrong is better than 5 people doing 5 different things right. And that's kind of what I feel like Golden Guardians do. They're doing a couple things that are interesting, but nothing seems to equal just a team, or just there's no cohesion in there, and it seems super one-dimensional. I kind of worry for them, considering the level of talent they have right now, where you have 2 former LCS champions, 1 former EU champion, and a player who was 1 game away from the semis at the World Championship one year. Like, this is, and not to mention you have Anero and Danon as your staff. So I worry for this team. In terms of how we're gonna play it, I think this should be fine for us, and I'm actually excited to see. Again, it's more of a tune-up game for Nisqy and for some of the other guys to kind of get their feet back firmly on the ground before they can take on better stuff. And I think like I think tune-up games like this are really, really good for the team right now. So again, not to underestimate them whatsoever, because I think Doublelift in his interview with Travis did say that he felt like they're still kind of a sleeper team. I think there might be some bias there, considering he used to play with two of the players there. But I mean, I wouldn't count his opinion necessarily out in that regard, because I do think that they're still somewhat slept on, and it's only week 1, so.
No, I actually like Golden Guardians a roster, especially on paper. So I'm kind of with Doublelift on that. I think it might maybe take some more time for them to come together and work it out, but I do think that there is some sneaky potential there to be a decent team, not specifically to be like good though.
Okay, well that's fair. Well, let's move on to CLG. I think a lot of our opinions on CLG can kind of be transferred from Golden Guardians. I think that they have a roster that can maybe do well, but so far from what we've seen, it really leaves a lot to be desired. And I think with how they played over the weekend, I think it can probably be really easy for C9 to beat them, as long as they don't get complacent or anything, or too overconfident. I think that they can beat them easily. I mean, I honestly don't see us having too much trouble. I mean, I think on Sunday they subbed Fallen Bandit in for Darshan, and Fallen Bandit didn't do too much better. So I think that it's just a matter of C9 staying on point, and I think they should be able to beat CLG no problem.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said earlier, there's nothing for me to sink my teeth in with CLG right now. And some of the interviews and some of the questions of Weldon really, really do boggle my mind, in the sense of just like, why are you going with this approach? Like, I think like for example, you mentioned the thing of subbing in Darshan, or subbing Darshan and adding Fallen Bandit. Like, Fallen Bandit hasn't been the most impressive in the academy, to my knowledge. And when you consider the fact that like Weldon's thing was just like, oh, we want to give, like, I think he gave like the, just for lack of a better term, right now, he gave like the very PC for kindergarten answer of, oh, we want to give everyone a chance, and like that just doesn't seem like a good coaching philosophy, especially when Darshan is pretty much like your most experienced player. I mean, he's not impressive, but I think like he's the one, like, again, like, I feel like that's one place you want to start with in terms of like your leadership. So when you have like a bunch of dudes who've never played together, it's like, where do you go with this right now? Power Revival is probably the only threat I would even worry about on this team, but Weldon had him playing Xerath, and that was just not impressive, and he was not very necessarily that impressive this weekend either. And then Stixay and Bio just seemed to be going down to a level to where I think I've almost just lost all hope in Stixay right now. Like, if not if not, I'm like on the verge of no return, like, or the borderline, like, just straight up saying I give up on 6A right now, because ever since his rookie season, like, it just has not been looking good for these guys, and their coaching is just super, super questionable right now, just after week 1.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in the Weldon point, because Weldon, on the teams that he was on, they haven't had the best of results. So it's interesting to see if this happens again, and maybe he's just like a snake oil salesman who's really good at maybe saying some motivational things and getting players kind of motivated, but when it comes to doing actual coaching, he doesn't provide a lot. So I'm curious to see exactly how Weldon turns out, as well as just what is in store for Stixay, because as you said, he's slowly kind of degraded and fallen off as time has gone on. So I'm curious to see how long Stixay will stay on CLG before push comes to shove. But I think Frozen. Sorry.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. I think that's everything. So I was gonna ask for predictions for this weekend to wrap things up.
I feel like I'm gonna say this every week. 2-0. So I think instead of doing our quote unquote predictions, because I think all of us are always going to pick Cloud9 to win, because our only game against Liquid is on the blue side next, which gives us a smidge of an advantage. I think we should talk about why we're gonna beat those teams, as opposed to just us saying that we're gonna win 2-0. So I think both of our games are going to be won through the mid and jungle. I'm not overly impressed with, especially CLG's mid jungle duo. I do like Power of Evil, but if they're gonna put him on something like Xerath or something, I'm not specifically too worried about it. I think we should just run train against CLG actually. But Golden Guardians is going to be more of a test, I think, individually. And I think if Nisqy can show that he's better than Froggen, like obviously better than Froggen, then I think that game should be no problem also, because I think we match up with them around the map very well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and also say it's going to be I think this should be I'm very convinced that this should be a 2-0 week for us. Golden Guardians just while should not be slept on. I think the reality is just that they still need time to gel on. Maybe over the long term they'll be more of a threat, kind of like some other teams that we see, like Dignitas in 2017, or Immortals or Immortals in 2017, I mean, we've seen these rosters that just they start off slow even in spring, but as summer comes up, like they ramp up and they start to get better. But for now, they still have a lot of work to do in their coaching and their players. I think that Golden Guardians thing should mainly be won through jungle, because Svenskeren usually tends to have Contract's number, and I think that, and again, Licorice has done very, very good work against Hunter and all his matchups with him. In the CLG one, I think across the lanes we're easily much better than all of them across all the lanes, even if they do put in Fallen Bandit or Wiggly or Moon or Darshan or whoever. No question that we should be able to make easy work of them, and it's going to be 2-0, which it's going to be a 2-0 week. And again, I think that it's absolutely a good confidence booster for the team to going forward, because from here for the rest of the round robin, I believe that's probably our easiest our easiest week period until the next round robin.
All right. Well, I also say it's 2-0. I think we're just a better team. Our players are just, I think, much far better in terms of talent than theirs, and I think that how we operate is a way better system than it looks like theirs has been. As long as we don't get too overconfident and stick to our game plan, we should win no problem. So I'm going to say 2-0 as well. But I think that'll do it for us for today. So thank you for listening to Bodied, a Cloud9 fancast. If you like what you hear, please follow us and tweet at us at C9Bodied, as well as you can hit us up at bodiedfancast@gmail.com. Ask us questions, interact with us, and we'll be sure to give you a shout out on the show. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
See ya, and also on the day we're recording this, happy birthday to our coach Reaper.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
All right, bye guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye.